Box of Niche. Box of Niche is where we basically unbox niche. This could be anything from all kinds, from books to films to events to history. You can hear it all kinds of these things on my show today. So, today I wanted to talk about one of my favourite video game franchises that deserves a bit of spotlight today, hence the name Box of Niche. And that game franchise is the Emergency game franchise. So, this was a German game franchise that helped shape and define the emergency games as we know and love up to today. So, firstly, background. Ralph Stock was born in 1969 and is a German game designer. And around 1997, Ralph stumbled upon a Commodore PET computer at the home of a family friend, and had his first chance to dabble in computer science. Hamburi, a resource management game, began to spur his fascination with video games and their development. And in the early 80s, at the age of 12, he built his first computer, a Sinclair ZX81, from an assembly kit, and he used that computer for his first experiments in programming. At the age of 15, he developed his first game for the Commodore 64, with a group of friends from school, which was a game called The Philosopher's Stone. Stock was still at school, of course, at the time, so when the game was published and on the market, it was marketed by Kingsoft in 1984. Fast forward to 1993, Stock founded the company Promotion Software GmbH in Germany. His company made promotional games such as Victor Looms, Tom Long, The Time Adventure, and Jeff Jet Adventure Highway. In 1997, inspired by the real-time strategy game Command & Conquer, which released its first game in 1995. In 1995, Stock invented a rescue simulation game which was called Emergency Fighters for Life. You see, Command & Conquer was about fighting wars and planning out battles, so he wanted to turn it into something positive. A lot of the emergency-based games around that time and around the early 2000s as well, were mainly focused only on one of the services. So take, for example, the fire department games, or Fire Chief as it's called in some areas of the world. They're mainly focused on firefighting. In fact, the only medical thing you really do in the game is take victims to the ambulance. You really don't do any proper medical thing. There aren't any medical people, it's just an ambulance. Or Theme Hospital, which focused on running a hospital, or the Autobahn simulator games, which focused on the Autobahn police in Germany, which of course is a police-based game. Emergency, however, allows you to take charge of all three services, and later on, the technical units and other rescue units on a series of disasters and missions, which was sometimes based on real life. So, the first game, Emergency Fighters for Life, released in 1998 in the EU and the US. It was developed by 16 Tons Entertainment, which was a game developer company that emerged from the brand of Label Promotion Software in 1993, and was also founded by Ralph Stock, that would develop every emergencies game and still do to this day. The game has you playing 31 different missions. You control fire, medical, police, and tow trucks units. And notable missions for this game included dealing with a crash on an F1 track, a roller coaster accident, fans leaving a football match, and protecting atomic waste transport. The game itself was a simple click and point to move the vehicles and units. And you get the units to take things out of vehicles if needs be, and the units can be selected from a base where they're all housed. Reviews for this game were mixed, but praised the original idea, but said the execution was poor. The gaming magazine Next Generation, in its 48th issue, gave it 2 stars and said, as a whole, Emergency shows promise, but has too many individual flaws to be a worthwhile purchase. The developer should be commended for an original idea, but the execution is poor. We have hope they've learned from their mistakes, and their next effort will be a bit more polished. End quote. Now, the next game to release was Emergency 2, The Ultimate Fight for Life. The release for this one is a bit murky. Some at best say 2002, some say 2003, but the closest I can find is 2002 for Germany and the UK, and 2003 for Russia and the US. Much later on, for the worldwide market, it would be on Steam many years later in 2018. Now, the game engine and the design of the game was overhauled and was now isometric and diagonal down in terms of how players see and play the game. Other new improvements included a dedicated command center screen. This is where players can access mission briefings, access the database, read mission hints, and see the mission maps. At the top of the screen clock, there are 3 clocks. The clock on the left is the countdown timer, the other 2 are clocks that show how much time has lapsed. The 3 monitors in the middle, however, are various maps of the mission site in relation to the base. The center monitor is the main monitor that displays the information and the main mission site map. The monitor on the right shows the mission site mini-map as well. At the bottom of the screen is the control panel. The monitor allows quick access to the motor pool, which unlike in the first game, is now split up into various different unit types, so fire, police, and medical and rescue. There is also a panel for information menu, and there's a right screen for budget gauge as well. There is also a SATCOM vehicle which allows players can deploy to enable the minimap and make it much more easy to control the mission and see all the areas. There are also more vehicles to be used in missions, over 25 in total. Vehicles included, such as the K9 vehicle, mobile crane, police van, and pontoon vehicle, which is used to make makeshift bridges in narrow bodies of water to get vehicles into areas with no bridges. Some notable missions for this game includes dealing with a coup where the rebels have taken over the base, as well as the government, meaning players have a limited amount of units to deal with the situation at hand. There's also a dealing with a riot in a max security prison. There's meteorites hitting a town, and even aliens that can be killed by chainsaws from firefighters, which is an updated version of the bonus mission from the first game. Now, moving on to the third game, Emergency 3. This was released in 2005 for EU and North America, and in 2006 with the subtitle Mission for Life, except in North America, which dropped the subtitle. The installment was the first in the franchise to use a 3D engine and movable camera angles instead of a 2D engine. There are 20 missions alongside 2 new game modes, Endless and Challenge, where the players handle an infinite number of everyday emergency situations. Unlike the past 2 games, players can now choose units from a menu and will appear on the map. Units are divided into how they were in the previous game: police, fire, and medical services. The game introduces technical forces, which are geared to handle a wide variety of technical problems, and as a result of this, the mobile crane and bridge layer were moved to them instead of the fire department. The technical units are, however, always referred to as technical assistants, as the German term for the real-life version of them was THW, which would have created trademark violations. It is also worth noting this debuts opposite gender units for police and medical. However, some female med units are seen in Emergency 2, according to some. However, I can find no evidence of this as of writing of this. This would continue until Emergency 5, where they seem to revert to male, but would make a return in HQ and Emergency 23. Some notable missions included for this one includes traffic check, which involves cars pulling over for speeding, which leads to dealing with a car accident at the end of the mission, a demolition of a high-rise going wrong, a bomb scare in a cinema, and climactic upheaval, which follows a similar structure to the coup mission in Emergency 2, only this time you're dealing with a heavy snowstorm and wolves with a limited number of units at a makeshift base. The game also debuted a ticker at the top of the screen. to let people know if something urgent is happening. On a final note, the game also introduced an editor software, which allowed the player to create custom maps, emergencies, missions, vehicles, and other custom game features. This then inspired a growing modding community who created modifications based on emergency services of different cities and countries. One final bit of fun trivia. The police in the original German version are green, to reflect what the real German police looked like at the time, while in the international version they were blue, which was the universal colour of police. Emergency 4. Emergency 4 soon followed and was released in 2006, subtitled Global Fighters for Life. It was also known as 911 Responders in North America. The game's campaign featured new changes. This include mandatory interludes where you have free play missions before each mission to earn credits to upgrade your units, and then move on to the next mission. This game also introduced a cooperative multiplayer mode, where players can join lobbies where the host either decides online free play or missions, to play along with a talking dispatcher who gives hints and lets the player know about anything urgent. And this also was an update of the ticker from Emergency 3. So what I mean by talking dispatcher is that instead of having a ticker at the top of the screen where it would just let you know that something urgent is happening or letting you know that things are going okay, you have a CGI talking dispatcher who is voiced, and this will remain a staple throughout a lot of the later games as well. And on the topic of graphics, the previous graphics engine and controls have been optimized and updated for this game, and the game contains 20 missions. The endless and challenge-free modes from the previous game also make a return, with 3 extra missions in the deluxe release. The players now have over 25 emergency vehicles with a variety of rescue personnel to use. The tech units that were added in the last game see a return in this game with extended features. This includes bulldozers that were last seen in the second game and were originally part of the fire department unit, along with the wheel loader. They also get a new unit, a recovery helicopter. This has a winch which allows engineers to access and rescue people in unreachable locations and grounded locations. This feature was originally used by the medical rescue helicopter in previous games, which has now been downgraded to a standard rescue ambulance. Some notable missions include going overseas for missions, such as plane hijack and explosion at Polar Research Station. These overseas missions has players selecting a number of limited units to put on the plane to take them to missions. Other missions include dealing with a bomb attack at a summit, a fire on an oil rig, a sting on a drugs cartel, and a fire at an open-air concert. This game has gone on to be a cult classic with fans and casual gamers alike, and has a huge modding community that's still active today. Between the release of 4 and 5, there were some spin-off games released in the gap years, which we'll cover in a little while. Now, Emergency 5 was released in 2014. Taking cues from the previous game, this game mixed both campaign and free mode. All missions take place on an open world map and plays in real time with mini missions to fill the gap. Now, while the game did make several improvements, this game was not well received compared to the previous game. The performance problems during its first release and the drastically changed Emergency World Builder, which was a replacement for the previous modding abilities for the previous game. Now, this unfortunately led, of course, to several mod creators refusing to move from the previous game. And while modding is explored in the game, it did not receive the attention that fans came to expect that they had in the last game. Now, the game had a new games engine, a custom graphics engine called that was built upon, Ogre, which is Object-Oriented Graphics Rendering Engine, to replace the previous one. This was aimed to create more detail and create a more realistic atmosphere. The only new unit in this version was the SWAT helicopter, which allows for quicker armed response. Now, bizarrely compared to previous games, The police are not equipped with firearms, meaning the players will have to call in SWAT to deal with armed criminals. For this game, there are only 11 missions, with more being added in DLC. Notable missions include a plane crash, an assassination attempt on the US President and German Chancellor, a flood, and a gang war. Warning and a heads up. So the next segment talks about the disasters that inspired or are based on some of the missions in the emergency games, and this includes talking about the death toll, showing images from the disasters, not as gory but still triggering. So if this sort of content is triggering for you or is uncomfortable in any manner, please refer to the chapters in the description below. Thank you very much. Now, the main games follow a very interesting trope. The trope is storytelling for a concept that audiences will recognize and understand instantly. It can be a plot trick, or a setup, or a narrative structure, or a character type, or a linguistic idiom, etc., etc. The games have a ripped from the headlines trope. This trope takes direct influence from or inspired by real events from the news, hence the name. The most notable example of this trope in other media property is in the US crime show and franchise Law and Order. Many of its episodes are based on true crime stories. For example, Season 14, Episode 19, Sanctuary, which was based on a few things, one of which was the Crown Heights riots in 1991 in August. The episode aired on TV in April 1994. The emergency games have some missions based or inspired by real disasters. While I could name every single one, I would be here forever. So I'll pick a few, one or two from each main game. In Emergency 1 has a mission called Plane Crash at an Air Show. This was based on the Ramstein Airshow disaster in Germany in 1988, on the 28th of August. 70 people died and 502 people were injured. It has been stated in some sources that this disaster was one of the things that inspired the making of this game, but I have found no proper evidence to back up this claim. Another mission was gas attack in subway. This was based on the Tokyo subway sarin attack that happened on the 20th of March 1995. 14 people died and 1,000 people were injured in the attack. Moving on to the second game, there's a mission called Hindenburg 2 Landing. This, of course, was based on the 1937 Hindenburg air disaster. 35 people died and 62 survived, but most of them had injuries. Another one was high-speed train crashes into bridge, which was based on the Eschede train disaster in Germany in 1998. On the 3rd of June, 101 people lost their lives and 88 were severely injured, and 106 had light injuries or were unharmed. In the third game, we have a mission called Collapse of an Adventure Water Park. This was based on the 2004 Transvetal Park disaster on the 14th of February, where 28 people, 8 of them being children, died. 12 were severely injured, and 189 were also injured. Another one was a train is about to ram into station concourse, which was likely inspired by the Gare de Lyon rail accident in France on the 27th of June 1998. However, though, the mission has one runaway train crashing into the station, whereas in the real-life disaster, the runaway train crashed into a stationary train at the station, killing 56 people and injuring 57. Among the dead was the stationary driver, André Tanguy, who remained in his cab to lead the evacuation efforts, repeating the warning over his train intercom numerous times to get everyone off his train, until he was killed in the crash. For the fourth game, there was a mission called Explosion in the Fireworks Factory. This was inspired by the Ester fireworks disaster that happened in the Netherlands on the 13th of May in the year 2000. The explosion killed 23 people, one indirectly, including 4 firefighters, and injured 950 others. A total of 400 homes were destroyed and 1,500 buildings were damaged. The fifth game didn't really have any missions that were based on real life events, but some have said that the earthquake mission in the base game may have taken inspiration from the 1950 Chicago streetcar crash from the 25th of May of that year, where 34 people died and 50 were injured. Though one that is concrete is Emergency 27's DLC, where the police deal with a demonstration. This demonstration was an unsubtle nod to the ongoing European migrant crisis that was happening on the time. This whole segment is interesting to me, as it's pretty brave to base some missions on real life, and not, cause controversy or cause upset. But instead, I feel these missions bring awareness to them and also inspires hope, as you are still able to save lives in some of these missions. And I think it brings itself nicely to what Stock wanted to do ever since the first game, bring something positive into the world. Sure, it's just saving virtual lives, but it does give you some sort of feeling at least. Now, Emergency 2017 was a DLC to the fifth game, which brings us nicely onto spin-offs. Many spin-offs were released for this franchise. For the first game, there was Emergency Police, which was a spin-off that also acted as the DLC to the first game. Now, this added a new unit, which was the SWAT unit. As the title suggests, it's all police missions, and there are 15 of them. But you do sometimes play as the other units, medical, fire, etc., that aren't police. Notable missions include dealing with a tank on a mad drive, escaped guerrillas, an out-of-control movie prop robotic lion, and protecting the British Queen from terrorists. And no, I didn't make those two up. Those were real missions you could do, and those were real. Some of these missions did get updated, however, for the second game. For example, the gorilla mission came back as escaped virus monkeys, which follows a similar pattern to the original one, with some changes of course. Both this and the first game of Emergency aren't on Steam, which is a gaming platform at the moment, which makes it hard to find. It is also the only game not to have English localization, even though the intro is dubbed in English. However, some people have uploaded the footage to YouTube, so you can't really play the game, but you can see what it would have looked like. Now, as mentioned, there were spin-offs that filled the gap between 4 and 5. Firstly, there was Emergency 2012, which was released in 2010. This game was vastly different to the main games. Firstly, units arrive on their own and are to the scene, and are the only units you can use, so there's no drop-down menus whatsoever. Secondly, the missions are part of a story and follow a narrative, something we would later see in Emergency 5. For this game, we explore other countries as well and help with their disasters and missions. This includes dealing with a fire on Tower Bridge in London, which is facing a severe snowstorm, a fire in Berlin during extreme heat, a cult in Spain, and fires in Athens. Now, in 2012, an expansion pack that for the game was released in 2012 was titled Emergency 2013, with new campaign missions, focusing on volcanic disasters and a new free-play map that follows the theme. It's worth noting that these games were controversial due to how different they were from different games that we came to know and love. But it has been stated that these games were not aimed at die-hard fans, and was instead a way to draw in new players into the series and to get the graphics engine to its peak. These missions include protecting deep drilling sites from all manners of threats so they can stop the volcanic eruptions. The final mission has you rescuing the Pope, and yes, again, I'm not making that one up. Now, the third and final installment of this spin-off was Emergency 2014 and was the second expansion pack for the Emergency 2012 game. This one focuses on meteor disasters and was released in 2013. Missions for this game includes a mission set in the past during the first meteor shower, then one 100 years later in modern times, and meteors hitting the Tower of Pisa, and dealing with an extremist group trying to take out the rocket that's trying to destroy the meteors. Now, while the fourth game got a deluxe mission with 3 missions, it wouldn't be until the fifth game we got more proper DLC. Firstly, we got Emergency 2016, which involves dealing with a plague. Improvements were made to the base game, such as police being equipped with pistols, finally, which was absent from the original base game of Emergency 5. Emergency 2017 soon followed, which had a new campaign involving protests and terrorism. Emergency 20 released in the same year as 2017, which celebrated 20 years of the franchise. It has 10 missions, recreating various missions from the past 4 main games. Each classic mission had a making of video with the developer speaking about the history of that mission after each one is completed. There were also games for portable devices, such as Emergency DS for the DS, Emergency for mobile phones, which used assets from the second Emergency game. There's a free-to-play but paid featured game called Emergency HQ, where you build a base, play with other players, make teams, and play missions with different units. As of now, with no 6th game in sight, this game is still active and getting constant updates. Finally, there was Emergency 2023, which had multiplayer game for a more casual experience and unit upgrades and customization. I've actually played this game and I quite enjoyed it. It's a real shame it's not getting updates, but I rather enjoyed it. It's addicting in nature, but also kind of nice to play a more casual experience, since I like the main games, but I feel like sometimes they'll be too intense for me and everything would just go horribly wrong on my watch. So, that's a look at the Emergency franchise. An interesting thing to note, finally, is that the German gaming magazine, for a magazine, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, it's German and I mean British, so I don't know how to pronounce that, but they called the game franchise still one of the best firefighting games of 2019, which I think is quite great. Sadly, stock stepped down a few years ago and is now in new hands. Nothing's on the horizon for now for the Emergency franchise apart from updates to HQ, but I want to stay hopeful. I really admired what Stock has created, wanting to create something positive and wanting to strive for positivity, and I think we should all strive to be positive or to create something positive like he did in a world that feels bleak and dark. So I think we should all strive to be positive. So yeah, as we box up this niche episode of Box of Niche, I want to thank you very much for watching, and stay safe out there, especially if you're especially in like really hot areas. It's roughly 30 degrees out there, so I know it's absolutely boiling. So stay safe out there, drink some water, stay in cool areas, and call the emergency services if you're feeling unwell in the heat and you feel like, you're about to, if it's a serious emergency and you're in the heat wave, then yeah, call the emergency services. Or if there's a fire in the heat wave, definitely call the emergency services. So yeah, I mean, that just makes a nice connection. I think about that. That's a really nice roundabout way. But no, in all seriousness, strive to be positive. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.